morning. Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet. This is my second stream in less than 24 hours, which is something that I don't normally do. So we're just going to get through it. Thank you for everybody who's shown up this morning. If I look tired, sorry, I am. Shout out to the people already in the chat. Martin Talk Cowboys, what's up? Good morning. And Mr. Eastside Harold, I don't think I've seen you here before, or if I have, it's been like once. So welcome. Um, Pretty sure it's like, well, no, I can't say I haven't seen you on a Monday morning because sometimes I miss people. But yeah, welcome everybody and anybody else who happens to be watching. As usual, let me know if you can hear me. And if you are watching on Twitter and you want to participate in the chat, like if you're like saying things and I'm not responding to them and you're like, why won't she respond to me? Come over to YouTube, join us in the chat, and let's have a fun conversation. So I'll probably be here for like, as usual until Skywalker Still show starts. But like we do every Monday morning, I've got a few sound clips from the post game sound from coaches, players, whatever. I've only listened to Coach McCarthy, Dak, and Micah so far, and Michael Gallup. Um, so I've got a few pieces of sound from them that we're going to talk about. I really can't wait to dive into the numbers and talk to y'all about that midweek. But as far as the loss last night, which I haven't mentioned, sorry, I'm gonna get in the groove of doing this on Monday mornings, y'all. I'm just getting used to getting up this early, much less talking to people. But yeah, well, I shouldn't say last night, yesterday afternoon, Dallas Cowboys had a game against the Arizona Cardinals that a lot of people expected us to win. And by a lot of people, I mean pretty much everybody. I can't think of a single person who actually predicted that the Cardinals would win that game outside of, probably some Cardinals fans or maybe some of the Cowboys haters who are like, oh, eventually something's going to go wrong. And people usually just keep picking something that could go wrong until something actually does. And then they say, see, but I mean, real shit, like something goes wrong for every team at some point. Um, by the way, normally I have a blue light behind me for Victory Monday, but today there's no blue light. So I actually haven't thought about what color to make it. So I just made it red for the Cardinals. Congratulations to those guys. But yeah, so first numbers that stand out, obviously 28-16, that's the score. That's a reflection of the fact that the Cowboys only found the end zone one time, whereas the Cardinals found the end zone repeatedly. And we're going to talk a little bit about more. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we hear what Mike McCarthy had to say about that. But the other number is penalties, man. Um, there was a lot of discussions about what the defense would look like without Trayvon Diggs. And a lot of people said, hey, the defense will be okay. We got Deron Bland, we got Jordan Lewis. We can figure it out, right? But I think one of the things or a couple of the things that surprised a lot of people were the pre-snap penalties, especially the defensive offsides, and then just inability to stop the run. There were a couple of times where the Cardinals ran it up the middle and Hankins was able to make that stop. But pretty much if they ran to the right or the left, there were times where I was like, can they see Connor? I'm like, I'm looking at my screen. I can see Connor. Is there something happening on the field to where they cannot see this dude? Because there were just times, dude was just like exploding for like chunk plays. And it's not like, I don't know. It's not like he was like juking people out of their shoes. He was just like there were just like major holes. Like it didn't even make any sense. Um, and yeah, we'll get more into that. Martin said red light for angry. I should be angry, honestly, with the way the defense played. Like there's a lot to be angry about there. I think the reason why I'm not is because and it's early in the season, and honestly what we saw yesterday, similar to what I had to say about the Buffaloes and their loss, it was an example of why losses early in the season are important. So, whenever you're winning, you might have weaknesses in your game that you are just not paying attention to, that you're not taking care of. And sometimes it takes a loss to like really shed a light on that and make you take it seriously. It's kind of like, if you live by yourself or you have your own room and maybe you kind of get out of a routine of keeping things clean and organized, and you're like, oh, whatever, I'll handle it later, as long as I can get up, do my routine, go to work out, whatever, I'm good, I'm fine. And then one day you get that call, like somebody's like, hey, can I come over? And then you look around and your place is a mess and you're like, oh shit, that's kind of what losses do for you as an athletic team. It kind of wakes up that sense of urgency in you. So yeah, I think that's the reason why I'm not particularly angry. But you're right, I totally should be. There were some ways that we fell short, especially on the defensive side, that I'm just like, yo, what the fuck were we doing? Um, and on the offensive side, a lot of people have said, like, okay, we can't blame that on the O line. But there are a lot of things that I do blame on the O line, because even without like the direct mistakes and the things that we saw that were glaring, as far as, some of the mistakes that Chuma Edoga made, for example, I do think that things like that can mess up momentum. It can mess up the rhythm. So even in situations where there wasn't a glaring mistake from the offensive line, I do think that the injuries on the O line caused a lot of problems that had a ripple effect throughout the offense. The offense just looked off. Now, there were definitely a lot of things to be disappointed about in the offense besides the O line. Body language is the first one that comes to mind. Not saying that that's the biggest issue, but if you know me, I'm very big on team culture, player attitudes, things like that. So when I see things like CeeDee Lamb playing for the penalty instead of trying to play for the ball, that's really disappointing. I'm like, CeeDee, you're a wide receiver one. I expect better from you. Um, and maybe me saying that will get him to do better, kind of like me going off on Michael Gallup yesterday, and all of a sudden Michael Gallup showed up. And that's another reason I'm disappointed in this loss, because I'm like, yo, Michael Gallup really showed up, and that could have been like a good day for him to like really shine and celebrate that. But I feel like what he did is going to kind of go unnoticed and unregarded because of the loss. Had we won that game, I feel like everybody would be talking about, look what Michael Gallup did, look what he contributed. He finally stepped up. But now that it's a loss, I think a lot of people are just going to be like, it's a loss. We're going to focus on what happened that didn't go well. Um, and unfortunately, that won't be the celebration for MG that I think he and a lot of people wanted. So Michael Gallup took your speech personally. Um, I think he did, Martin. I think he did. And until proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that was all me. Um, sarcasm for those who don't know me. But yeah, so I was disappointed in CD and his body language, and red zone, man, the red zone issues. I think after the Jets game, a lot of people were like, well, that was the number one red zone defense in the NFL. We didn't get into the end zone, but we have a kicker. We scored more points. Our defense showed up. Whatever. It is what it is. We'll figure it out later. And going back to how losses can put a spotlight on things, I think what this showed us is that even if you're not the number one red zone defense in the NFL, even a team like the Cardinals, and when I say like the Cardinals, I'm simply referring to the fact that they were 0-2. They weren't performing well before this game. So I'm not saying that they don't have good athletes or anything like that, but you don't have to be the number one red zone defense in the NFL to stop the Cowboys from getting in the end zone. That's what yesterday showed us. It showed us that what the Jets did against us, even a team that's not the Jets can duplicate that in a sense. Um, so I'm really hoping, and based on the sound, I do believe that what happened yesterday, especially in the red zone, woke the team up to some of their weaknesses in that area. Um, so if y'all follow me on Twitter, you know that I go to anime conventions, and one of the things I do at anime conventions is I host panels. And one of my favorite ones to host is one called Main Character Mindset. And one of the first things I talk about in Main Character Mindset is how beliefs influence your thoughts, which influence your emotions, and then actions, and then results. And I think before this game, some of the beliefs for regarding the red zone, for example, was that okay, a really good defense like the Jets can stop us. And so the feeling was okay, we can still feel confident in what we're doing. We can feel good about what we're doing. We can feel good about the prospect of the offense getting to the end zone when we play our game against most teams in the NFL. And so I think the actions were probably to continue preparing as normal and not make all the necessary adjustments that they needed to make in order to have a better game yesterday. And I think yesterday, that belief was adjusted a little bit. Hopefully, they've gone from thinking, hey, we can get into the end zone against most teams in the NFL. In most situations, we'll be successful here. And we can kind of figure out as the season goes along, it's a long season, we'll figure out how to be more effective against better defenses. Um, and I think that belief has changed to like, yeah, no, we have some weaknesses here that just about any team willing to put in the work to adjust their game to figure it out, they can take advantage of, and we need to do something about that immediately. Um, so Eastside said, Jazz, tell us how good Cooks is again. Eastside, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't think I've ever like really gloated about Brandon Cooks. I think my the most feedback I've had about Brandon Cooks is I've commented a couple of times on his ability to anticipate and take impact, which he did. So Eastside, maybe you're thinking of another podcast, but thanks for joining us in the chat. All right. So on that note, we're about 12 minutes into this thing. So let's take a listen to some of the sound I got from Mike McCarthy. Um, I'm not going to start from the very beginning like I normally do, but I am going to start at this one point where he starts talking about the scoring component. We're going to listen to a couple of sentences that he had on that. He goes from that to talking about the red zone struggles, and then he starts talking about situational stuff and how he feels like teams are going to attack us every week, or attack them every week, I should say. Sorry, I'm reading the quote as I wrote it. But he talked about how teams are going to attack them every week, which once again speaks to what I was saying about, okay, they've woken up to the fact that, yo, like we're seeing a pattern. There's a blueprint being created here. So let me go ahead and open that. We'll listen to that. And then, as usual, we will pause and keep going.
They scored 4 touchdowns. We had 1 touchdown, 3 field goals. That's the scoring component of it. But when you get into the situational stuff and how we feel teams are going to attack us, we have to learn from this because I mean it's going to be an every week challenge. So yeah, I was hopeful going into Saturday's practice, but when we walked off the field Saturday, that's kind of our final personnel meeting. So yes, when we got on the flight, we knew we didn't know about Tyron. Tyron was a game day. Changes. I mean, changes a lot of things. But I'm proud of our young linemen. I tell you, I mean, they not only they stepped up and played today, but they did it on very little reps throughout the week. So I mean, it wasn't that's a challenge that everybody has. When you have injuries on Sunday, it's a you got a full week of prep to go into it. When you have things that are not cleared till the end of the week, it's a challenge on the guys that have to step in there. And I thought all three of those guys did a nice job.
Alrighty, so we listened to them talk about like literally a couple of sentences about how they're going to be challenged this way every week. And then he went into talking about the injuries that happened later in the week. And so one of the things that was interesting to me that he said, I was hopeful going into Saturday's practice, but when we were walking off the field, that's our final personnel meeting. And that's when they found out about some of the injuries. And then they found out even later about Tyron. So like I said earlier, when I talk about the O line being an issue, it's not that I'm trying to say that those guys did a terrible job based on what should have been expected, right? Because as he said, he's proud of the young O linemen. He said that they did a good job, but they did it with very little reps. So that's what I mean. I'm not trying to like talk bad about the offensive linemen that were there, but the fact that we had those O line injuries so late definitely affected the team. And so it's not so much an excuse as like, yeah, that's one of the reasons I think the offense was really terrible when it comes to pointing fingers. I got a few replies about Dak, and Dak did have some issues yesterday, which if we're talking about what we're hoping the offense noticed and things that we hope that they'll do differently, I really hope that he realizes how many times he threw the ball into traffic and it was a very dangerous throw and that could have gone like very, very wrong. But even that is something that I think the offense offensive line has something to do with, you know. I think whenever your rhythm is thrown off that way and your timing is thrown off that way, it gets you to the point where you're making, you know, less good decisions. So I don't know what's going to happen with these injuries and who's going to be on the offensive line moving forward. But I do think Dak has got to really take control of this offense and figure out what he needs to do better in order to mitigate that. Because at this point, there's nothing that you can really do about it, right? There's nothing that can't put his hands on Tyron and Zach Martin and heal them. So he's gonna have to figure out, okay, what do I need to do as a quarterback to not make as many dangerous throws, to get our offense to be moving a little bit more efficiently and a little bit more effectively, and to actually get the job done, especially in the red zone. Let's see what y'all are saying here. Carl said, I think they're looking ahead to week 5, trying to rest players. Carl, I sincerely hope the fuck not, because it's a 1 week at a time thing. You know, we like I can understand thinking about week 5, especially and by thinking I mean like daydreaming. Like, okay, we had 2 good weeks. We're expecting to beat the Cardinals. Man, I wonder what it's going to be like whenever we face the 49ers. I can see that. But in terms of preparation, I really hope that our team is more professional than that to do something like, okay, well, let's rest players against the Cardinals, who we're really not that familiar with because we haven't played them recently and they have new coaches on their staff. Let's rest players during this game and just, you know, make sure they're good to go for week 5. I really hope not. I hope they're better than that. Martin said that there's no continuity and Dak's clock got sped up. Dak's clock definitely got sped up. It got sped up and thrown off. Um, but at this point, I want him to be able to work through those situations. I don't want to have a situation where Dak is like, my clock got sped up and I was thrown off, and so I couldn't execute well. I want to see a Dak Prescott that says, um, there was no continuity on the offensive line. My clock got sped up, and I figured that shit out, and I got us the win. That's what I want from Dak at this point. Um, so yeah, let's keep going. There was another clip in the Mike McCarthy sound, and then after that, we're gonna listen to Dak. So let me go ahead and find that section. Here we go.
Well, the biggest thing in this league is sustaining success, and that can be from one play to the next, from one series to the next, from 1 week to the next. So, and I think you saw that in the first half. When you're getting stops on defense, and when you're scoring touchdowns, I mean, there's a flow to it, and you could see early, as far as how they were playing us on defense, we were going to have to go the long way, which is fine. But we got to score. We score touchdowns. We may be still out there playing in overtime. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could see those guys work every day. So I mean, I get what the numbers were, last week, and Rico. I've always loved his run style. He runs angry. I mean, just look at the play he had there in the fourth quarter. So yeah, that's no surprise. So it was good to get those guys some touches.
All right, so I do agree. It was good to get Rico and Gallup some touches. That's pretty much why I played that part of the sound. I just wanted them to get their shine from Mike McCarthy. Both of those guys did very well. But as far as what he said about the biggest thing in the league is sustaining success, in order for them to do that, and during the offseason, people talked about issues on the O line in terms of depth and what they thought that was going to look like. Um, I don't think anybody expected 3 injuries to pop up on the O line on a Saturday. That is a lot to deal with. So everything that he was saying about sustaining success requires continuity, and that could be like week to week or it could be play to play. That's why the offensive line is an issue. There's no continuity there, and that means that where the play starts, there's no continuity there. So there's no continuity in the way the plays are continuing, in the way that they're going. Now, what I will say is yesterday, I said my biggest concern was Hoffman. I actually thought Hoffman did really well, but the most disappointing thing was Chuma Edoga, and I shouldn't even say that Edoga himself was the most disappointing thing. I was like, why the fuck is he at tackle? I feel like during and after training camp, everybody was on the same page that like, yo, Chime Doga, left guard, doing good. At tackle, not so much. So let's not put him there. I don't know what led to that decision. Obviously, I'm not quite in those rooms where those things happen. But yeah, that didn't make sense to me. But I saw them line up and I was like, all right, I'm going to trust the coaches on this. And then I was very immediately shown why I should have just like basically gone with my initial feeling. Not that it can do anything, but my initial feeling was like, this is not going to go well. And then as things started to, unfold, we saw that that didn't go well. So, yeah, definitely got some issues to work out there. I saw that Tyron was dressed, but didn't go out. I don't know what the fuck is going on with the O line. Like y'all, like the injuries were a surprise, the lineups were a surprise. Their inability to protect Dak at times was a surprise. It was just a hot mess up front. So even though Mike McCarthy says like Dak did well with his feet, um, I'd like to hear how Dak felt he did with his feet because I don't know anybody who watched that and said, "Oh yeah, Dak did well with his feet." Dak didn't do well on much, if we're being quite honest. Let's see. Tyler Smith wasn't going to play left tackle, especially with a hamstring injury. Nobody wants that. Okay, I'll give you that, but I mean, is Awesome that bad? Is Awesome so bad that we'd rather see what Chuma did? Because like I know I have my criticism of Awesome and we've all heard it, but I just feel like even with those criticisms, I just felt like he could have done a better job. And maybe the coaching staff didn't feel that way for whatever reason, but yeah, I didn't feel like that was a move. Uh Eastside Herald, do I still feel like Dallas are contenders? Yes. Um Chuma was asked until the second half. I 100% agree. But let's keep going with some sound from Dak because I feel like we're starting to get into some of the topics that Dak is going to talk about. Well, actually, no. The quotes that I pulled from Dak actually had more to do with the general mindset of the team. So we'll talk about that. But I will work in some of the things that the offense actually did. Good morning, Jay Money. It's it's good to see you. Um, so let's go to some of the sound from Dak. And then, yeah, we'll talk about that. Actually, hold on. Give me a second. I'm actually going to find the timestamp first. But yeah, in terms of why I feel like Dak or the Cowboys are contenders, is because, I mean, I personally trust them to learn from this game and to do better. And at this point, whether you think Dallas is a contender or not, like that just shows how you feel about the team, you know, because it's been 3 weeks. And so you can look at these 3 weeks so far in one of two ways. You can look at it as like, okay, this team did really well its first 2 weeks. And now in week three, we're seeing who they really are. We're seeing the mistakes and we expect the mistakes to continue. We think in the big moments, these things are going to happen again. And we don't trust Dallas to get the job done. We don't trust them to get very far. We don't trust them to get to the Super Bowl like they said they were going to do all off season. That's what they've been saying, right? Or you could look at it a different way. You could look at it as, hey, it's been 3 weeks and they did great those first 2 weeks. The offense was on point. The defense was doing amazing things. And we look at this game as a one off. We expect them to learn from it. We expect them to bounce back. And we're going to see more of what we saw those first 2 weeks. And we expect them the same way they made changes in the first 2 weeks, we expect them to still make changes in the big moments and get it done and get to the Super Bowl like they promised. So it's like you can look at it either way. So Eastside Herald, like when you asked me if I believe the team is contenders, yes. Like I'm looking at their high points. I'm looking at the things that they've done well. I'm looking at what they say that they can learn from this experience, and I expect them to do better. That's it. But none of us are fortune tellers. So yeah, it. We know you're not a Dallas fan. I don't expect you to believe that Dallas is a contender, and I'm not going to try to convince you. But as far as why I believe they're contenders, that's the reason. Um, so yeah, I haven't seen enough to convince me that the team can't get it done. I still believe they can. And y'all are doing a lot in the chat. Normally, I get to everybody's comments, but today I probably won't. So I'm gonna let y'all have fun with that. Talk amongst yourselves. But this first clip of sound that I have from Dak is where he talks about staying in the moment, and he's kind of responding to someone asking him about his feelings about yesterday. So give me 1 second. We'll pull that up. We'll play it, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're staying in the moment. That's who we are. That's who this team is. This was a humbling loss in that sense. Obviously, we've had a lot of adversity just throughout the week, and it wasn't easy. Obviously, it wasn't easy. Nobody's making excuses. We thought we had a great opportunity to come in here, even with the adversity, and get a win, and we didn't. So, obviously, every week you've got to reset and you've got to refocus. And honestly, it's a little bit easier after a loss. So there's not going to be any worries about that. Obviously, myself, the coaching staff, the players, the way that we attack the preparation, and then come in tomorrow ready to work. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good call. I thought we were going to get exactly what we got. As I said, I'm going to put it on myself and take the game out of the ref's hands. I got to make the better pass, put a better pass out there, try to get it out in front of them. But hell, I mean, Michael had the best, MG had the best perspective of that throw and what that was and how the defender played it. But when the guy's back's turned to me and he never looks back, I mean, it's simple as that.
All right, we're gonna pause right there, and then I have one more piece of sound that I'm gonna play for from Dak after that. But yeah, he talked about he was asked about not getting too high or not getting too low, and he talked about staying in the moment, the fact that they have a lot to learn from this game. And I saw something in the chat about plays that Dak could have made with his feet. And earlier in the sound, he did mention that. I didn't pull up that part for us to listen to, but he actually did acknowledge that yeah, there were probably some more opportunities for to make plays with my feet, and we probably should capitalize on that. Um, so Big Dow, what's up? Said that's on Mike too. He has good flow 20 to 20. His red zone flow ain't there yet. This is true, and that's something that Mike McCarthy talked about in his sound. So, like I was saying earlier, I feel like this is something that can be addressed not only with Mike, but especially if you think about what Mike McCarthy has been saying about the play calling and about how this offense is supposed to work. Mike McCarthy told us this offense is designed for Dak to be able to make changes and make decisions at the line of scrimmage. So, with that being the case, I've got to put it on both of them, both for the choices they made and also for how Dak decided to execute. But yesterday, when I was talking about Colorado and their loss, I said sometimes you don't know until you know. In other words, I was talking about what Colorado did and how they responded to the opponent that they were facing and how they just looked completely overwhelmed. And I think that's something that can apply to the Cowboys here too, in the sense that I think there were just certain things that they didn't know until they knew. It's like you might know that your red zone offense is an issue, but maybe you don't realize how much of an issue. Maybe you don't realize how easy it is for other teams to come in and duplicate what the Jets did against you and keep you out of the end zone. Um, so yeah, I definitely think Martin said one interception and the world is ending. For some people it is, Martin. For some people it is, and that's fine. Um, and there are going to be a lot of people who take advantage of this moment, kind of like Eastside Harold, who might even just be here because he knows my audience is small, so he can get more attention in the chat because there's fewer people. Um, so by all means, welcome guys, and yeah, but yeah. So he did throw an interception. Um, and to me, the interception isn't as big of a problem as the fact that there were so many chances for interceptions. I feel like there were a lot of times that Dak was lucky the ball wasn't intercepted and run the other way, if I'm being quite honest. So that's why I was saying I want him to make better decisions. It's obvious year in and year out. I know we were all excited about Mike McCarthy calling plays. But one thing that Mike McCarthy can't do anything about yet, and definitely at this point in the season, is the fact that it seems like our offensive line, they just keep having these injuries that cause them to have to rotate and not be continuous. And it affects Dak. And so, what I want Dak to do, like I said before, is realize, hey, this is going to be an issue. I need to be the one who mitigates it. I can't just be upset that there's no continuity on the O line. Not anymore. It's happened too many times. It keeps happening. I've got to figure out what do I have to do in order to mitigate this and get us the win in spite of it. Because clearly, that's something that the team is going to have to deal with moving forward. So let me play this one more piece of sound for you, and then we'll do Micah's sound, and then we'll talk a little bit more and get out of here. What is this? I'm gonna just close this window. Sorry, there was an extra window open. All right, here we go.
This is a wake up call for you guys. You guys on top of the world first two games. Everybody's singing your praises.
Y'all put us on top of the world. We know who we are, and in that same sense, I'm sure the media got what they wanted. For us, it hadn't been but one undefeated team in this league, ever, ever. So yeah, it sucks. It's humbling, but to say it's a wake up call, we knew we had a lot of adversity, and we just didn't get it done. And I think it just goes back to myself, the offense, and the red zone. So I mean, we get better at there, we win this game, but we've got to fix that area. Period. Thank you.
All right, so I like what he had to say there in terms of y'all put us on top of the world. And let me be specific about that. If we think about a lot of the things that have been said by members of this team, when it comes to the whole we're the best talk, that was coming from the defense. And I think before the loss of Trayvon Diggs, a lot of people did agree. And we did hear a lot of pundits, a lot of analysts say, hey, this could very well be the best defense in the NFL. So I'm not even mad at players on the defense saying, okay, we're the best defense in the NFL. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find any sound from anybody on the offense saying that they're the best. They made it clear that their goal is to get to a Super Bowl, as it very well should be. And I'm glad that they made that a goal that they're willing to support with each other. But I don't think I've heard anybody on the offense say we're the best offense or we definitely will win a Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, there was one interview where Dak was very clear. He said, hey, I want us to get it to a Super Bowl. And I feel like if we don't get there, then the season is a failure. So to me, that shows an awareness that, hey, we're going to have to work hard to get there. We're going to have to work hard to win it. And that's our goal. And if we don't accomplish that goal, then we fucked up, right? But as far as this whole idea of like, okay, y'all were on top of the world. That's what Clarence asked him about. I know sometimes it's hard to hear the reporters in these videos, but it was Clarence asking, hey, y'all were on top of the world before this. How do you feel now? In so many words, that's what he was saying. And Dak is like, yo, y'all put us on top of the world, and I definitely respect Dak for doing that. And in that sense, it kind of does remind me of the Colorado situation a little bit, where you have two teams that put out a lot of sound and a lot of media. There is a shit ton of interviews from coaches and players throughout the week. There are people who do shows, who are in the locker rooms, who are at practices, who talk about what they see, what they hear, all throughout the week from Dallas Cowboys. Yet the media will grab a certain narrative and just kind of go with it. And then people who aren't paying attention start to think like, oh, well, that's what everybody thinks. Kind of like how I was asked earlier, tell us again how good Brandon Cooks is. And I'm just like, when did I ever talk about Brandon Cooks? Except to say that he's good at taking contact, which he is. And that is one thing that he did show yesterday. Um, but yeah, it's like if you're paying attention to what these teams are actually saying, especially like on the Colorado side, it's like you actually hear what the players are saying to each other. You can see what's happening in practices. You can hear what Coach Prime is actually saying. And if you're paying attention, you see how that's not the same as what the media tries to make it look like they're saying. And I think the same thing happened here with the Cowboys, where Clarence is like, y'all were on top of the world, and Dak is like, y'all put us on top of the world. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we always knew that there would be adversity, and anybody paying attention would know that yeah, there was going to be adversity at some point on this team. Even the most hopeful of Cowboys fans, content creators, supporters, whoever, I can't think of anybody who saw this team going undefeated. Now, granted, I don't think anybody saw us losing to the Cardinals either. And I think the losses that we did anticipate, we thought that they would be losses where maybe it was a hard fought battle and the Cowboys didn't come out on top. That's not what happened here. This was not a hard fought battle. This was a lot of mistakes made by the Cowboys. This was a lot of spotlights being put on their weaknesses and on their shortcomings, and just taking advantage of some of the things that happened last minute. But even when it comes to things that happen last minute, like what happened on the offense, I personally believe that with proper preparation, you can do something to mitigate that. And so that's why I keep bringing up Dak and him being prepared to do what he needs to do despite what's going on in the O line. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to do, but I'm saying it's something that he's going to have to do. And if he wants to be the guy to get it done, he's going to have to figure out how to get that done. He's going to have to figure out something to overcome whatever issues might arise on the offensive line because they're obviously going to happen. So we talked a lot about the offense this morning. So I'm gonna get into this sound from Micah, and I'm trying to see if I actually. I'm gonna just start from where he says we beat ourselves, and then we'll go from there because I didn't really put where to stop. But it's a short interview, so it's like even if we listen to the whole thing after that, it's not a super huge deal. But we're gonna start from there, listen to the rest of it, and then we'll finish talking about this game and get out of here. Grab some breakfast, listen to Steel. All right, here we go.
Definitely think they was calling it. But yeah, I think we just beat ourselves. We put ourselves behind the eight ball a couple times and just it just wasn't uh championship football. It was just us not executing, us being flat, us, you know, trying to make a play instead of just making plays together, and that just tends to happen. So we just need to look at the film, fix where we messed up, and just never make the same mistake twice. That's how you get better.
They were kind of joking about the surprise thing with Marcus saying that, but I mean, with how dominant you guys have been the first 2 weeks, was this? I mean, did it just blow like completely shock you that this happened today?
I mean, the outcome is definitely shocking. It definitely hurts. Anytime you compete, it hurts to lose, but I take ownership. You know, I take full ownership. Just because I feel like I give the team a lot of energy, and I feel like I got to give more energy. I got to bring these guys together. We got to come together, so we can play better on defense. So I take full ownership. It is losing a guy like Trayvon. Me and Trayvon feed off each other. That's really like my brother. Like, I talked to him already after the game, and it's tough to lose like someone, but we know we got his support, and we gotta play harder for Trayvon. We gotta play harder for him because I know how much he wants to be out here and the emotions he felt after energy. So we got to be better for him. My message for us is never stress, never worry. Let's just get better. Like, it's still early on the season. This is the tough part about playing in the National Football League. Every team has its day. The last 2 weeks we was light on fire, and today we came out and we got lit. And that's just the reality of football. And you look across the league, it happened to a couple teams. Reality sets in. You look at the Chiefs. Everyone thought the Chiefs would go out and blow out the Lions. The Lions came out lit and fired up. So the reality is we got to take in every game as like the Super Bowl, and we got to play up to our standard. We can't play down to teams, and I felt like that's what we did today.
Thank you, Micah.
All right. So we're going to dissect that from the end and going backwards because the end is the first issue that I had with what Micah had to say. We got to stop playing down the teams. I don't know if that's how I would describe the issues that we saw yesterday. Arizona, like last season, we talked about how there are teams that just show up differently to play the Cowboys for whatever reason. I feel like that's what Arizona did yesterday. Um, and I think that there were a lot of mistakes on defense that I don't consider the defense playing down. I consider it to be the defense fucking up and Arizona taking advantage. Joshua Dobbs was way more elusive and way faster than I think people anticipated. I know I hadn't watched a ton of film on him, but he looked like a very different quarterback than the last time we saw Joshua Dobbs when he was with the Titans in December. I think that was December. It was late in the season last year. But the thing is, when we saw him with the Titans, he had been with the Titans for 8 days. I doubt he knew the offense that well or even his fellow teammates that well at that time. Now he's had a full off season, and well, no, I don't actually know when he got with the Cardinals, but he's had far more time with the Cardinals than he had with the Titans last time we saw him. And I know Micah is gonna see these things whenever he goes and watches film. And I don't want to harp on Micah as though he was the biggest problem on the defense. I don't think he was the biggest problem, but I do think he usually makes the biggest impact. So whenever he starts making mistakes, whenever teams figure out how to handle him, it also has a big impact on the offense. So that's why I'm bringing him up right now. It's not that I think he was the worst or that, he's the only person who needs to do work, but that was the thing that stood out to me because Micah is a player that I watch. But in the very beginning, there was a play where he actually got back there to Joshua Dobbs and he goes to grab him and he literally misses. It's like it was like second and something. It was the first drive, it was second and something. I don't remember. But it was like about 14 minutes and 40 something seconds remaining in the first quarter. So it was like the game had just started for anybody who wants to go back and look at this. But Micah goes to sack Josh Dobbs. He literally does like this and misses. And Josh Dobbs ducks under him, gets a bunch of yards. And it's stuff like that that just shows me like Micah was not, I don't want to say he wasn't paying attention, but they threw things at Micah that he definitely didn't expect. That's not something that we see quarterbacks be able to do to Micah Parsons. He didn't anticipate it and he wasn't able to really like catch up. And we saw little things like that happen throughout the game. And so that's what I would say is an area where maybe Micah can work on his mental side because we heard a lot about him during the offseason, during preseason, do a lot of combat training in order to mitigate some of the things that were happening last season in terms of how people were taking advantage of his style, right? So he added some things to his toolbox in terms of moves. Cool. We've seen how those things have benefited him so far this season and made him an even better player. Cool. But one thing about fighters, if that's the style that Mike is trying to approach his game with, is they have more than one move. They have more than one thing they can do to their opponent in order to beat their opponent. They don't just throw the same strike every single time. And one of the things that I think we started seeing with Micah during the first couple of weeks is we saw him kind of do similar moves every time. So a team watching that can look at that and be like, okay, this is mostly what he's doing. So if we can figure out how to mitigate that, we can eliminate most of the threats that Micah Parsons poses. And so I think that's why you saw Josh Dobbs do things like get very low when Micah got close to him, because that was a way to make it harder for Micah to catch him. Like, even if you can't be so fast that you escape Micah Parsons, you can get low and literally escape his hands when he's right next to you. We saw it. Same thing with the swim move. Like Micah has like this swim move that he'd been doing to get past offensive linemen a lot this season. We've seen it a lot. And one of the things that I saw the Cardinals do is that when they would stop him, they would like stand him up and they would lift up higher. They weren't trying to like bring him to the ground or attack his midsection and hold him back. They were basically going up high so that even if he did try to swim over, he couldn't swim over in a way that got him past them. And I thought that was very smart on the part of the Cardinals offensive linemen, for them to mitigate his movements like that. So it's things like that that I definitely believe when Micah goes and watches the film, he'll be like, oh, this is what they did. So now I got to come up with something else. And I'm hoping what he'll realize is that he's going to have more tools in his arsenal that he can pull out at a moment's notice and just go. Basically becoming more like a fighter, like he said he was going to do, but like now he's got to level that up in a completely different way than what he has been so far. Once again, it's another reason why I'm happy this is happening during week 3, because things like that are things that Micah Parsons definitely needs to realize, and I think he's going to get it now. But yeah, as far as what he first said, I think we just beat ourselves. I do think that's a big part of it as well. There were times where I was like, and I've got to go back and look at the film. But for example, relating this to what we just said about Micah Parsons, in the past, when we've seen Micah get double teamed, get triple teamed, there's somebody else who was left open, who was able to then get the job done. Somehow the Cardinals were able to stop Micah, sometimes with two or three dudes, but then also still make room for Josh Dobbs to get out or for Connor to get out. And that's something that I'm going to have to look a little bit more closely at the film in order to be like, that's what happened. Um, but yeah, it's just another example of some of the things that people were doing on the Cardinal side that was very, very good. So I don't want us to have. Okay, are we there? Cool. I think we're back. Sorry, I have two screens. This one went out first, but this is where I'm looking at y'all. But yeah, I don't want us to get into this narrative of like, oh, the Cowboys played down to their opposition and that's why they lost. Even if they did, I don't think we can deny that the Cardinals definitely played up. The Cardinals definitely approached the Cowboys with some things that weren't expected from the Cardinals. They did some things very, very well, and I think it's disrespectful to the Cardinals to just act like, oh well, the Cardinals won because the Cowboys played down. No, that's not how this game went. That's not what happened. The Cardinals did some things really well on both sides of the ball that really fucked up the Cowboys that I think the Cowboys weren't prepared for. And I don't know if it started on the mental side, like they had no idea what was coming and then they couldn't execute against it, or if it literally was like, okay, they had an idea, but just physically they didn't get the job done. But either way, the Cardinals definitely stepped up, and I think we need to give them credit for that. Um, I'm gonna try to see. I saw somebody say my name earlier. Okay. Oh, Mickey. Yeah, Mickey said, yeah, when Micah misses that tackle, my antennas went up. Mine too. And that was very early in the game. And I was just kind of like, oh shit, I've never seen that happen before. But I was like, okay, hopefully that was a one-off, and they'll do better. And there were a couple of sequences, I'll say. I was about to say drives. I'm like, no, I can't think of a whole drive or a whole series where our defense was just on point. But there were a couple of sequences of plays where our defense did start to do better. And then Arizona adjusted, and yeah, they got it done, and the Cowboys didn't. So let's see. Um, I wanted to make sure and answer some of the replies that people sent to me um in Twitter. So one person said, honest question, no bias. Do you still think Dak is better than Hurts? So when I initially said that, I said that months ago, and I said that based on the fact that Hurts hasn't had enough time just in the NFL and enough time performing well for me to just like be like, okay, he's better than Dak. Because I think one of the things about being good is being prepared to face adversity. And I think there's a lot of adversity that Dak has dealt with that Hurts just hasn't, you know. And that's my perspective. Like I said, I'm very big on culture and player mentality and things of that nature. So when I see someone who just hasn't faced that level of adversity, I don't feel comfortable saying that they're better than somebody who has, that they're better than somebody who's been in the league for a long time. I haven't seen enough. Hurts is very, very good. And I've loved Jalen Hurts since he was in college. So I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm just saying I would need to see more in order to feel comfortable saying that. So no, I'm not at a point yet where I feel like Hurts is better than that. Does he have the potential to be? If he stays on the trajectory that he was on from year two to year three, and he maintains that upward trajectory, absolutely. Hurts is already better than a lot of people. Like fuck that for a second, right? Hurts is already one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like so I'm like if you really feel the need to compare him to Dak Prescott, have fun. You can do that all day. But just talking about Hurts and his game and who he is, he's very good. He's better than a shit ton of quarterbacks. And the trajectory that he's on, if he maintains that momentum, he can be better than a lot of people. But the thing is, it's like sometimes when adversity comes along, whether it's in life or on the field or with your team or what have you, sometimes that affects that trajectory. And that's what I'm saying about Jalen Hurts is like, I need to see can he maintain that trajectory or is he going to face something that causes him to like fall down a couple pegs and then have to come back? And he just hasn't been on this trajectory long enough for me to feel comfortable being like, oh, yeah, he's better than Dak and he's better than all these other people who've been playing longer than him and who have been through more than what he's been through. I mean, he hasn't even played week three. So week three of this season. So let's see what he does. Let's give it more time. And just believe me, if Jalen Hurts gets to a point where I feel comfortable saying Jalen Hurts is better than Dak Prescott, I will say it. Like that's fine. I have no problem doing that. But just based on me and my criteria, and you know, this is an opinion-based topic. Everybody has their own criteria, and that's fine. It's another one of those situations where I'm not gonna try to change your mind. Don't try to change my mind. I won't try to change your mind, and we'll just be some motherfuckers who disagree. I don't care. But as for me, my criteria, what I base my opinion on, like, no, that's not something I feel comfortable saying. Um, I'm just looking. I'm looking at the comments. I feel like I need to pull a box and be like, when I'm looking here, I'm looking at the camera. When I'm looking here, I'm looking at y'all's comments. If I look here for a long time, I'm scrolling through the comments to see if there's something I need to answer. I can't really tell. But another question I was asked, or another reply I got, I should say, said, I don't know if they totally respected the Cardinals until it was too late. Add in not playing smart football with all of the penalties. The penalties were just atrocious. That was undisciplined, sloppy football. And initially, when I read this reply, I was like, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that they didn't respect the Cardinals until it was too late. But now that I think about it, and I'm thinking about what we just heard from some of the players in their interviews, I'm like, yeah, maybe they didn't respect the Cardinals, not the way that they should have. I think they took the Cardinals seriously in the sense that I think they went into this game thinking, okay, any team can beat us at any time. We have to be on guard at like any given Sunday, that whole thing. If we don't play our game, it's not going to go well, blah, blah, blah. Like in a very general sense, how you would expect any opponent that's made up of professional athletes, I think they respected the Cardinals. Did they expect the Cardinals to throw at them what they threw at them? Did they expect the Cardinals to have answers for Micah Parsons? Did they expect Joshua Dobbs to be as elusive and as effective as he was? Did they expect the Cardinals to be able to duplicate defensively in the red zone what the Jets did to them? Nah, I don't think they expected any of that. At least they didn't play like they expected it. And so, in that sense, yes, I see how the argument could be made that they didn't respect the Cardinals the way that they should have. Martin said 13 penalties, 107 yards. That is crazy. And it's even crazier when you look at the fact, like, last week we talked about winning the time of possession battle. This week, at least the last time I checked the box score, which was like just before the game ended, and I'm gonna check it again just to be sure. Actually, let me check it here. But I know at least until very late in the game, um, the time of possession was damn near even. Hold on. I'm very used to looking at the box score on ESPN. I'm used to the format, so I'm trying to pull up that specific one. And I think I got it. So if we look at time of possession, um, so yeah, actually this week the Cowboys won the time of possession battle by a few minutes. 34 minutes and 33 seconds to the Cardinals 25 minutes and 27 seconds with the ball. During that time, the Cowboys ran 416 plays and the Cardinals ran 400. So very close, but it's like in terms of number of plays and in terms of time of possession, the Cowboys won both those battles. But the penalties, the Cardinals had 8 penalties for 69 yards, which is not good. But the Cowboys had 13 for 107. That right there could make a difference. Even if not for everything else that we've talked about today, that right there could absolutely make a difference in how the game goes? So, um, yeah, just there was a lot of sloppy play, a lot of undisciplined play. Some of it led to penalties, and some of it just led to mistakes on the part of the Cowboys that they're definitely going to have to fix before they face someone like Bill Belichick. Because regardless of what you might think about the Patriots and Mac Jones, um, I do think Bill Belichick is a coach that's absolutely capable of figuring out how to duplicate what the Cardinals have done and what the Jets have done in the red zone. So yeah, hopefully this has been a wake up call in terms of what could happen against them, and the Cowboys don't go into next week making the same mistakes and disrespecting their opponents in the same way. Let me see what other questions we have, or replies, I should say. One person said, "We looked soft, we played soft. It felt like they felt entitled to just steamroll the Cardinals and were pouting when that didn't happen. Got to get tougher." Um, I don't know if I would say it in such an extreme way. But there are definitely moments where I can see how you might feel that way. That response came from a Mr. Alex Humphreys. Um, if you focus on things like body language, they definitely look soft. And I say that in the sense that if you've ever been on a high performing team, right? So I've never played a professional sport, but I did play for a team that was the number 7 ranked roller derby team in the world, went to international championships every year, right? So in my sport, I was on a high performing team. And one of the things that you try to encourage your team and your teammates to do is to not get too high, not get too low. not get too caught up in momentum, thinking that momentum can carry you, to take things one play at a time, one game at a time, one week at a time, one opponent at a time. And when things don't go your way, you don't want to let it affect you. You want to have a short memory and move on. I don't think we saw that from the Cowboys, especially from people like CeeDee Lamb, who, if you are the leader that you've been propped up as, you are wide receiver one. Yes, your attitude can affect the flow of the rest of the team. It can affect just the feeling of the rest of the team and their and thereby how they perform. So yeah, Martin, you're right. You got to find a middle ground. That's why people talk so much about when we see leaders in the NFL who are even killed, as they say. That's why people gloat on them so much and praise them so much, because that's the attitude that you want to have. And I will say, I think Dak Prescott himself has gotten a lot better at that over the past several seasons. But the thing is, Dak isn't the only person that can affect the attitude and the feel and the vibe of the offense. CD being who he is, he can affect all of those things. So when he's pouting, when he's playing for the penalty instead of the ball, and then getting upset when he doesn't get it, when he's on the sideline looking sad, instead of trying to motivate himself and thereby motivate his teammates, all of that can have an impact. The way your offense performs, it starts on the sideline. I know earlier I said it starts at the snap of the ball with the offensive line. That's when the action starts. But as far as the attitude and how you're approaching the game, that shit starts on the sideline. It starts with the communication that's happening on the sideline, what you're talking about, what adjustments are being made, how you're motivating each other, how you're talking to each other, how you're interacting with each other. It all starts on the sideline. And honestly, that's another area where I expect that to kind of step up and do something, show us that you're the leader that you say you are. You got to talk to people like CD. You got to talk to these guys and get them to get their attitudes in check. That is one thing that I am putting on Dak Prescott in terms of what I intend to see this team do better. He's a leader. He's the emotional leader, especially of the offense. I expect to see him get that offense to do better in terms of their attitude and emotions moving forward. We cannot be a championship team and have people acting like that on the sideline. Let's see. Mickey said something. Mickey said, one thing I don't like, a lot of these players seem to hop on social media right after the game. I think the guys pay a lot of attention to what's being said about them. Mickey, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not as worried about that, just because at this point, it's become such a natural thing to do. I don't think it's any different than, in the old school when guys would, turn on the TV or open a newspaper. I think it's just something that they do. I don't think they do it so much that it's a distraction. And they all know, even the ones who aren't on social media, they know. They find out one way or another. So I'm not really worried about them hopping on social media. I think it's fine as long as they get it together, watch film. All right, hop on social media, say what you got to say, get off, get your ass in the film room, start looking at that game and figuring out what happened, because there's a lot that they need to talk about. Martin said, it's just social media these days. We're in a different time. Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Now, if they were doing like, kind of like how a lot of us did as fans, where you're on there for a whole damn day ragging on one person, that would be a little bit different. But, them getting their thoughts off, especially if it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna come back stronger, yada yada yada. Um, yeah, I don't really have a problem with that. Let's see. Anything else? Mickey said, Jazz, that's a good point. Thank you. Martin said, Dak isn't okay. That's talking to somebody else. So, on that note, I'm pretty sure Skywalker Steel is about to start. So, like I say at the end of every show, I'm trying to get some breakfast, watch Sky, and then go get a workout in. So, huge thanks to everybody who joined me today. I'm going to try to keep doing these every Monday. Thanks for joining the conversation. And as always, if you have anything to contribute, feel free to at me on Twitter, BTCHESLUV Sports. Good morning, B Bird. We're actually about to get out of here, but definitely tune into Skywalker Still. Thank you, Mickey. Much appreciated. On that note, I'm Bitch 2, and I'm out.